That's a nice looking scope. A little thrower lever for the zoom. Let's see how tight these are. Everybody said they're kind of tight. That is pretty snug. That's not bad. That turns pretty easy. Those are pretty easy. Now these, this is for your lighted opticals, or reticle. Looks like it goes from 1 to 10. And in between each one, it turns off. So you don't have to crank it all the way back down. You can just stay on, just right off of whatever one you're on. And turn it off in between. I don't know if you can hear that. Those feel good. Those feel real nice. I like the good clicks. Positive click, positive stop. Definitely see which one you're on. One of the reasons I like this scope is because it's well marked which way you're going. For those of us that aren't used to cranking on these things a lot, I can just simply stay on rifle and look at it and go, okay, well that's up, that's right, that's left, you know. There's your focus or your parallax. That's good, nice and stiff, that'll stay. And of course your zoom. This is 6 to 24 power first focal. Looks like we got us another little package. Cool. More Burger 105s. Gonna need those. Got a little bubble level, 30 millimeter. That's from Vortex. Got some scope rings. These are going to be handy. I got the extra tall ones. And what is this guy? Since we're stepping up our game to 30 millimeter, I had to order some new tools. And this is a little kit to line up and lap our scope, which we're going to be mounting on our new setup. So this ought to get us going to get our scope on there. Well, this little tool right here is a lapping tool, which I'm going to show you guys how to use. I always like to check these rings and make sure they're flat before I go squeeze them down on a nice expensive scope. This looks like an adapter tool. It's got a little flexi shaft on there, so you can screw it in the end of this thing if you've got a really crazy lapping job you got to do, and you can hook your drill to it and just turn the thing in there. But that's a little extreme for me, it seems. I think I'm just going to do it by hand. Give us a little compound. That's a 220 grit, which I've got plenty of that. These are little lineup indicators. You put one on each ring, which I'll go through, and those little points should point to each other when you've got her lined up properly. And of course our level. Definitely need to make sure we got this thing leveled up. Cool, let's get the gun over here and get this thing set up. First thing I want to talk about is our little scope riser here. That is a that's from Leupold. That is a 20 MOA riser. I did use my little tool. I'll probably drop a little insert in here somewhere to lap that thing. I wanted to make sure this thing fit flat on this action. These things are CNC made or however they're made, and I just wanted to make sure it was perfectly in line. I've got the dowel piece that I use to lap in my chassis system here with the action, and I also used it on this thing to make sure that it was sitting on here flat. I could actually sit the piece on here and kind of hold one end down and see that the other end was raising up, so it wasn't a perfect angle. So I used the lap tool to get this thing nice and in line with my action here, so it wasn't putting any undue stress on there. I know my gunsmith has told me that he's actually put a dial indicator out on the end of the barrel out there and torque these things down. He can watch the dial indicator move, so he knows that these things will have a tendency to do things to your barrel. So if you've stuck one of these on your rifle and you're having weird issues with the groups after you did that, you might want to consider what you've done here. I guess the first thing we need to do is see what kind of spread we need here for our scope. So we'll pop these things off and set the scope on there. Looks like that might work, depending on how far back I gotta go. I'm gonna take a pencil and I'm gonna mark these two caps so I don't get them confused. I'm going to mark them with direction and which one they go to. So just a nice little light pencil mark on there so I know. Go ahead, we'll make this number front, back, forward. That way I'm not scratching anything. It's just a little pencil mark I can take off there pretty easily. Here's where I was talking about our little pointers. You can actually tell that those little tips are right in line with each other, so that's a good sign. That means our mounts are machined properly. That means our Picatinny rails on are straight, so everybody's good there. So they do line up like they're supposed to. That's what these little guys do. Alright, I'm going to torque these things up, and we're going to lay our tool in there, put a little compound on it, give it just a little bit of rub, and see how well they're hitting. I'm just reading over the assembly instructions here. Looks like they want 35 to 45 inch-pounds of torque on these. Got it figured out about where I want to put these things to start off with. Let's torque these things down. My trusty little inch-pound torque wrench. There's that. We've got our little lap tool. I want to run a little bit of scuff on there to see just what we're hitting. Just going to spread a little bit on there. A little bit on the caps. Install our tool. Yeah, sounds like the ice cream man's here. Kind of surprising with the COVID-19 stuff going around that the ice cream man never stopped to show up. We just want to kind of get these close, make sure that they're even. Just kind of starting to feel it. You just want to kind of work it in a little figure-8 pattern. You can hear it grinding in there. Put just a hair more torque on it. Now we're going to take this apart, wipe them off, and see how much is actually hitting. Let's see if I can get this in focus here. Might have too much light on it, hopefully not. I don't know if you can see the spot where it wore in there. There's the other one. And you can see that's actually what's touching your scope at this point. So we're going to go ahead and lap these things in and try to get them to where most of that scope, most of those rings are actually holding on to that scope. So when we're torquing down on it, we're not actually just pinching in extra tight in just a couple of little areas. So hopefully you can see that. And okay, I think we have this thing lapped in about as good as we're going to get it. Remember that little tool I showed you for the back end of that reamer? That guy there that screws into the back, little flexi shaft that you could use a drill on. Well, I ended up using that drill and just slowly honing on those caps because they were out pretty good. I guess Vortex had them pretty close, but you saw where they were just barely hitting. I'd hand lapped for a while and it was just looked like it was going to take forever, so I put the drill to it. Much easier. Sometimes on my high power rifles, I'll stick a little blue Loctite underneath those caps to kind of help hold that scope a little bit. But this one here doesn't kick much, so I'm not going to be too much worried about it. And there we go. We got one level scope. Level with the stock. Level with the receiver. And assuming the caps are level. And the crosshairs appear to be straight up and down with the guns. I'm going to try to get these in a crisscross pattern. And there we go. One well-mounted Nikon scope. Well, hopefully everybody got a little something out of that scope install of mine. I usually kind of go about it a rather severe way, but I like to make sure I got my stuff mounted on her good and snug and square. Nothing worse than going to the range and halfway through your shooting you notice your scope's loose or you can't get a good zero because stuff's moving around. I want to see how well this thing tracks, make sure everybody's tracking real good on here and everything. I picked a load right in the middle of that sweet spot that I'm going to just load up a bunch of ammo for it and run out and just kind of see how well it shoots while I'm working in on my scope. Got to get it zeroed and everything. We've got a good zero stop on there. I've got a friend of mine that wants to start a little friendly competition, so hopefully I can get it ready for there. But we'll get a zero on it, and then we want to start stretching this thing out to distance and see how well these 105s are working in it. So stick around. I've got more videos coming out on this thing. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're not, so you don't miss any of these things, and we'll catch you next time.